I never imagined my pulse would spike over the woman who used to pack my best friend's lunch. It started with a beat-up paperback, a bouquet of wildflowers, and a gloomy Seattle Sunday. I am Jaden, 23 years old, fresh out of university and barely treading water as a junior graphic designer. It is a far cry from the artistic revolution I envisioned back in my dorm room, sketching logos until dawn. But it covers the rent for a shoebox apartment just outside Capitol Hill, and that has to be enough for now. The routine is suffocating. Wake up, drown in black coffee, wrestle with Photoshop, and pray I do not miss a deadline. Weekends are usually a blur of dive bars or passing out on my sofa. No cinematic romance, no grand purpose. Just me, drifting through a city that feels increasingly indifferent to my existence. I have had a few relationships, sure. College flings that burned out before they began, leaving no scar, no memory worth keeping. Maybe I am broken. Or maybe I am just holding my breath for a feeling I did not know I needed. Then there is Liam. We have been thick as thieves since freshman year, bonded by terrible dining hall pizza and a shared obsession with vintage sci-fi. He is in finance now. Crisp shirts, downtown office, but he still cracks the same terrible jokes. He is the one constant in my life, the only person I actually let in. And in the periphery, there was always Danielle, his mother, 42, high school art teacher. Always poised, always there, like a calm anchor in a storm I was not paying attention to. I met her years ago when Liam first dragged me home for the weekend. She offered sodas and a quiet smile, moving with a grace that felt foreign to our chaotic teenage energy. I knew about the divorce, but we never spoke of it. She was just Mrs. H to me. Benevolent, distant, a fixture of a domestic life I did not belong to. That changed on a Sunday ride to Fremont. I was returning a dog-eared copy of Dune we had been debating for weeks. The air had that sharp autumn bite, the sun fighting a losing battle against the perpetual slate-gray clouds. It felt heavy. I leaned my bike against the peeling white picket fence, a sight I had passed 100 times without really seeing. Liam's car was gone. Odd. I figured I would just drop the book on the porch and vanish before anyone noticed. But then I saw her. Danielle was out front, knees in the dirt. She was tending to a wooden planter, surrounded by bursts of bright marigolds and purple blooms. Hands soil-stained, wearing an oversized white shirt tucked into worn denim. Her hair was a caramel disarray, pulled up in a knot that let loose strands catch the rare filtered light. She looked peaceful, but there was a shadow there too. A quiet sort of exhaustion, or maybe solitude. It stopped me cold. I almost retreated, but she looked up, her eyes locking onto mine. "Jaden?" Her voice was warm, tinged with surprise. "I wasn't expecting company. Liam is at a networking thing." "Right," I stammered, brandishing the book like a shield against the awkwardness. "Just dropping this off. I can get out of your hair." "No, stay." She stood, dusting off her hands, that gentle smile resurfacing. "Actually, do you have a second?" "I could use a hand." I shrugged, shifting my weight. "Sure. What do you need?" She gestured to the garden bed. "Trying to document these for my students. A little Instagram inspiration. But I am a disaster with cameras, and the house is empty." She laughed, a self-deprecating sound that felt incredibly human. "Think you could work your magic?" "I am hardly a photographer, Danielle. I mostly just push pixels around a screen, but I will give it a shot." Her smile deepened. "Just Danielle? Good. You are not in my homeroom anymore." I pulled out my phone, stepping back, framing her against the greenery. She posed by the planter, the diffused light softening her features. The contrast, the rough concrete, the delicate flowers, the crisp white of her collar. It worked. "Chin up a little," I directed. "And smile." She did. It was not a camera smile. It was real, tinged with a memory I could not read. There was a melancholic beauty in her eyes, something open and vulnerable that I had not seen before. I kept shooting, capturing the light in her hair, the soil on her fingers, evidence of life, of work, of tenderness. I lowered the phone, and she stepped closer to review the shots. Her arm grazed mine. Just a flicker of contact, but it sent a jolt through my nervous system. "Oh, wow," she whispered. "I actually look, I don't know, like I haven't aged since 30. She laughed, but her voice cracked, betraying how much she needed to see that. "You do not need to be 30 to be stunning." The words tumbled out before I could filter them. My cheeks flushed instantly. It sounded like a cheap pickup line, but the sincerity hung heavy in the air. She did not laugh. She just looked at me, a long, searching gaze, her lips slightly parted, processing the shift in dynamic. "Thank you, Jaden," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "Can you send those to me? I would love to keep them." "Yeah, of course. Where to?" She paused, then reached for her pocket. "Here, let me just give you my number. Better to keep it simple." I tried to feign indifference, but my ribcage was rattling with anxiety. She punched in her digits and shot me a quick message, just a smiley emoji and another thank you. I forwarded the portraits to her, mumbled a goodbye, and bolted for my motorcycle, the paperback still heavy in my bag. The ride back to my apartment was a blur. My mind kept replaying how her expression had shifted when she saw those images, the way her guard had completely dropped. It wasn't standard politeness. It looked like the reaction of someone who hadn't felt truly noticed in years. Once I was back in the safety of my living room, I tossed my novel onto the coffee table and collapsed into the sagging cushions of the couch. I unlocked my phone, scrolling through the gallery again. Details I'd missed earlier started jumping out at me. How the golden hour light accented the hollow of her cheekbone, the contrast of the garden soil on her hands against her gentle expression. I tried to convince myself I was just admiring the composition. At 9 o'clock, the vibration on the table made me jump. Seeing her name on the screen nearly stopped my heart. "Thanks, Jaden. These shots make this old lady feel like she could still turn heads." Then, a winking emoji. I stared at the pixels until they blurred. That digital wink hit harder than a physical blow. This was the same woman who used to scold us for yelling at the television during sleepovers. I typed out a response, deleted it, then started over. Everything felt too clinical or too bold. Finally, I hit send on, "No magic tricks needed, Danielle. Just take someone with the right eyes to see you." As soon as the message delivered, my stomach did a somersault. Had I pushed too far? A minute later, her bubble appeared. "You're sweet. Good night, Jaden." My adrenaline didn't settle for hours. The next morning brought another text, asking if I had used filters or software. I assured her it was all natural light. That question spiraled into a thread about my graphic design projects and her art curriculum. It felt breezy, uncomplicated, yet totally foreign. I wasn't used to this channel being open without her son Liam acting as the bridge. 3 days later, a new notification pinged. "Coffee? My treat." To say thanks for the portrait session. I froze, looking at the screen. No mention of Liam, no family dinner context. "Sure," I typed back. "I'm free tomorrow afternoon. Just tell me where." She chose a spot down by Lake Union, a cozy joint with timber tables and a view of the water. I told myself it was just a transactional thank you gesture, but my gut told me this was the beginning of something I didn't have a label for yet. If taking Danielle's picture had cracked a door open, agreeing to this coffee was me stepping across the threshold. The cafe she selected was perched right on the edge of the lake, an intimate space with floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the docks. Stepping inside, I was immediately wrapped in the scent of dark roast and warm cinnamon. Soft jazz drifted through the air. Something slow and melancholy that made the frantic pace of Seattle feel miles away. I arrived 5 minutes early, but she was already there, cradling a ceramic mug near the window. She had swapped the gardening clothes for a navy sweater and jeans, her hair falling in loose waves instead of the usual practical bun. The overcast light from the window washed over her features, and for a split second, I just hovered in the entrance. I stood there trying to pinpoint the exact moment she stopped being Liam's mom and became the only thing I could think about. She caught my eye and beamed. "Hey, Jaden," she called out. "I almost thought you bailed. I'm chronically early." "I'm not late. I countered, sliding into the booth opposite her. You're just operating on school bell time. She laughed, a warm, genuine sound that instantly settled my nerves. Guilty. When you work with high schoolers, you learn to beat the chaos by 10 minutes. We ordered a black coffee for me and a latte for her. I braced myself, waiting for her to bring up Liam, to ask if I'd heard from him recently, but his name never came up. Instead, she pivoted to me, my career, the grind, what fueled my creativity, and what drained it. I found myself spilling stories about all-nighters in the studio, and the professor who claimed I had an intuitive sense of balance despite my wreck of a GPA. I vented about nightmare clients who demanded 5 different logos for the price of a single sketch. Danielle didn't tune out. She leaned in, her gaze locked on mine, absorbing every word like it mattered. "You have a real gift," she said quietly. "Those photos weren't just lucky snaps. You captured something. You made me feel recognized." I fidgeted with my cup, suddenly shy. "I just point the lens and click the button." She shook her head. "No, you saw a version of me I thought had faded away. That counts for something." Her voice held a slight tremor, the same vulnerability I'd glimpsed in the garden. I didn't know how to respond, so I just held her gaze, letting the silence stretch into something heavy. The conversation flowed into her world next. Messy art rooms and teenagers arguing about vanishing points. She recounted a story about a student who tried to paint a still-life bowl of fruit, but ended up with what looked like a pile of colorful balloons. "I couldn't fail him," she grinned. "He was beaming with so much pride over those balloons." I laughed, leaning across the table. For a moment, the years between us evaporated. I forgot she was my elder, or my best friend's mother. She confessed her love for jazz, talking about sneaking into dive bars in her 20s to catch live sets. I admitted the genre usually went over my head, but I promised to give Miles Davis a real shot, just for her. "Don't force it," she murmured. "Let it wash over you." We stepped out into the cool air, the horizon bleeding soft pinks across the water. She cinched her cardigan tight against the chill. "This was good," she breathed out. "I'm glad you came." "Thanks for the caffeine," I told her. "My treat next time." She waved it off. "I wanted to. Honestly, you've been solid company." That single word echoed in my head the entire ride back. Company. Not Liam's buddy. Not that kid always hanging around. Just me. Just company. The dynamic didn't snap back to the status quo after that. It drifted, subtle and slow, like summer fading into autumn before you realize the air has changed. Suddenly the leaves are turning. Our texts picked up rhythm, starting with photography talk, drifting into work vents, and settling into the random noise of daily life. She would shoot over snapshots of her students' art projects, chaotic, messy smears of paint that somehow felt alive. In return, I shared my lunch break sketches, the private doodles I usually kept hidden in the margins of my notebook. "Wasting your genius on margins?" she messaged, adding a cheeky emoji. I stared at the screen, smiling like an idiot for way too long. Occasional meetups became a routine. A quick espresso, a stroll. We would wander the perimeter of Green Lake just as the maples were igniting into crimson and gold. She noticed things I missed, the way sunlight fractured on the ripples, or a dog spinning in circles, blissfully unaware of time. I would nod, feigning interest in the scenery, but mostly I was studying her. Then came the afternoon she needed a hand with the backyard fence. Liam was on a shift, so it was just us and the peeling paint. Under a pale, striving sun, we stood shoulder to shoulder, slathering fresh white over the weathered wood. "Missed a spot," I teased, gesturing to a gray patch. She rolled her eyes. "Please, I teach art for a living, remember?" She flicked her brush, sending a splatter of white onto my cheek. As she laughed, I retaliated, swiping a neat white stripe down her forearm. In that moment, the years between us evaporated. We were just two people laughing in the grass, stripped of labels and expectations. "You're actually handy," she conceded, flashing a crooked grin. "Wow, high praise," I shot back, going straight on the resume. Looking back, I realized how effortless the silence between us had become. Back then, though, it just felt light. I felt seen. Then the weather turned. A month post-coffee, the skies opened up. It was one of those Seattle deluges that drowns the city in gray. Thunder rumbled, shaking the window frames. I was curled up on the sofa, feigning productivity on a logo design, when the phone vibrated. Danielle. Hey, hate to ask. Power's out. I'm here alone and storms aren't really my thing. Are you around? I didn't hesitate. Didn't even think. On my way. I shoved a flashlight and a box of half-used candles into my pocket, threw on a hoodie, and pedaled into the downpour. The asphalt was black glass under the streetlights. By the time I rolled into her driveway, I was drenched to the bone. She answered the door, clutching a dim camping lantern. The shadows played tricks on her face, casting her as someone ageless. With her hair tied back and wrapped in that gray wool, she looked fragile. You didn't have to do this, she said, though her eyes screamed relief. I know, I said, dripping onto the mat. I wanted to. The house was tomb silent. No refrigerator hum, no ambient TV chatter, just the relentless drumming of rain. Liam was crashing elsewhere. We were alone. I arranged the candles on the low table, striking matches until a warm, amber glow pushed back the dark. We settled onto the sofa, not touching, but the air between us felt charged, the distance negligible. A crack of thunder shook the room. She flinched, knuckles whitening in her lap. Not a fan, I take it? Her smile was brittle. It's childish. My dad used to tell me thunder was just the sky having a conversation. But now, her gaze wandered to a frame hanging in the gloom, a snapshot of a past life. Her, Liam, the ex-husband, freezing a happy moment at some forgotten picnic. Now, it just makes me feel insignificant. Silence stretched. Candlelight caught the wetness in her eyes. I've been a wife, a mother, a teacher, she whispered. Somewhere in that list, Danielle got lost. I exist for everyone else. Then one day, I woke up and realized I'm invisible. My chest ached. I couldn't fix a lifetime of erasure, but I knew what I saw. I knew who was sitting next to me. I see you, I said, the words hanging in the stillness. She turned. She searched my face, looking for the lie. Not just as Liam's mom, I pressed. You, your art, your terrible jokes, the way you describe color like it's a native tongue. I see you. A sharp intake of breath. She leaned in, inching into my orbit. Our shoulders grazed. Neither of us pulled back. Do you know what it's like? She murmured. To be invisible? I thought of my cubicle, the anonymity of being just another pair of hands behind a glowing monitor. Yeah, I confessed. More than I care to admit. She nodded slowly, as if that shared brokenness was the bridge she needed. We sat in the silence, the storm outside finally losing its breath, while the room swam in candlelight and a heaviness I couldn't quite name. When the electricity jarred back to life, we both blinked, the sudden harshness snapping the spell. She let out a soft, self-conscious laugh. I guess the sky ran out of things to say, she murmured. We stood, and she began extinguishing the flames, one by one. I grabbed my flashlight. Thanks for coming over, she said at the door. You really didn't have to. I know, I replied, but I'm glad I did. She offered a smile. Small, but real. Me too. I rode my bike home through the thinning drizzle. My shirt was still damp against my skin, my thoughts deafening. I didn't tell Liam where I'd been. I didn't even know how to start. How do you explain that his mother called you because the dark terrified her, and you went without a second thought? Something delicate had taken root between Danielle and me that night, a tiny, luminous thing existing in the gap between who we were and who we weren't supposed to be, and I had absolutely no clue how to handle it. That stormy night had shifted something fundamental in us. I felt the vibration of it in every message that followed. On the surface, the world kept turning. I still dragged myself to the startup every morning, wrestling with typography and color schemes, trying to make dull client concepts look vaguely inspired. I still went out for drinks on Fridays, playing the part of a 20-something just trying to figure it all out. But beneath the noise, a quiet current ran between Danielle and me. It hummed behind every text, every pause. She'd send a photo of a student's chaotic painting. "Tell me this doesn't look like a crime scene," she'd type. I'd sketch a cartoon monster over the image and send it back. "You're welcome," I'd reply. Modern art solved. She'd respond with a laughing emoji and a "you're ridiculous," and I would stare at the screen far longer than was healthy. I kept it all from Liam. The storm, the candles, the way she asked if I ever felt like I was fading into the background. Every time I considered speaking up, a knot tightened in my chest, locking the words firmly behind my teeth. A few weeks drifted by in this steady, strange rhythm. Then, one afternoon, Liam texted, "Hey man, Mom's turning 42 next weekend. Throwing a small thing in the yard. You better be there. Need help on the grill?" I stared at the phone. Her birthday hadn't even crossed my mind. "Yeah, I'm in," I typed back. "Need anything?" He replied, "Just beer and those useless muscles of yours." The day of the party, I cycled over with a six-pack of craft brew dangling from the handlebars and a nervous flutter in my gut. The sun was dipping low, painting the horizon in bruised pinks and oranges, the air holding that crisp edge that announced the arrival of autumn. The backyard felt transformed. Liam had strung warm yellow bulbs across the deck, casting a soft, hazy glow over the grass. Folding tables were scattered about, laden with paper plates and oversized bowls of chips. That familiar planter of marigolds sat by the steps, vibrant against the dimming light. Liam was at the barbecue, flipping patties and trying to look competent. A few of his work friends stood nearby, their voices loud, discussing topics I couldn't track. Danielle drifted between the deck and the lawn with a tray of drinks, laughing at something a colleague said. Her hair was loose, waves cascading past her shoulders. She wore a simple green dress that ended just above the knee. It wasn't flashy, but seeing her made my chest constrict. She caught my gaze across the yard and offered a small, private smile. Not the polite hostess expression she wore for others. This was softer. Just for me. "Bro," Liam shouted. "Finally, get over here. These burgers are threatening to mutiny." I tore my eyes away and walked over to assist, grounding the beer on the table and pretending my heart wasn't hammering against my ribs. It was an intimate gathering. A handful of Liam's buddies, two of Danielle's teacher friends, a Bluetooth speaker humming, the low drone of chatter. People shared anecdotes about her, joking about her being the cool art teacher. She just smiled, thanked them, and brushed off the praise like she didn't know where to put it. I observed her from the periphery, watching how she flowed through the crowd, ensuring glasses were full, checking the food, tending to everyone else. Always giving, always in motion. Occasionally our orbits would intersect. She'd graze my arm as she passed, or lean in to whisper, "Thanks for being here." The words landed with more weight than they should have. As the evening stretched out, the crowd began to thin. Headlights swept the street as cars pulled away. The music dipped lower. The sky turned completely black, leaving the string lights as the only beacon in the yard. Suddenly, one of Liam's friends jogged up, asking for a jump start for a dead car battery. Liam groaned but headed for the driveway, casting a glance over his shoulder. "Start the cleanup, man," he said. "I'll be back in a second." And just like that, it was only Danielle and me left in the quiet of the yard. I started stacking plates and sweeping cups into a black bag. The playlist had long since faded, replaced by the rhythmic chirping of insects claiming the night air. Glancing back, I spotted her lingering by the edge of the balcony, a wine glass loosely gripped in her hand, as she gazed into the black void of the woods beyond the fence line. The commanding presence she held in the classroom was gone. Stripped of her armor, she seemed fragile, just a solitary figure in the aftermath of her own celebration. I drifted toward her, swinging a heavy garbage bag at my side. "Hey," I murmured, breaking her trance. "Everything all right?" "The guest of honor usually looks a bit happier." She turned, offering a weak curl of her lips that didn't quite reach the glassy surface of her eyes. which shimmered under the hanging patio bulbs. "It was lovely," she insisted. "Liam really outdid himself. And you, thanks for staying to tackle the cleanup." "Least I could do," I replied, letting the plastic sack hit the deck so I could bury my hands in my pockets, forcing my gaze away from how the fairy lights caught the gold in her hair. "I mean it. You earned a night like this. Being the center of attention suits you." Her expression flickered. She swirled the crimson liquid in her goblet, staring into the vortex. "You're very sweet," she whispered. "Most days, I'm just a mother, or a faculty member, the responsible one. That's the script I'm stuck reading, isn't it?" A sigh escaped her. "Tonight, though, it just hit me how fast the calendar flips. One blink, and suddenly I am 42. She met my eyes again, and the polite mask she wore for company finally slipped away. "I have spent decades shape-shifting into whatever people require of me," she confessed. "Liam's parent, the dependable colleague, the rock. But is it selfish to wish someone would just look at me and see a woman instead of a title?" The silence between us thickened. The ambient noise, Liam laughing in the driveway, a distant engine revving, seems to mute, fading into background static. Bypassing logic, I closed the distance between us. My pulse was thundering against my ribs, but I refused to retreat. My hand found hers, fingers grazing her skin before intertwining with a gentle firmness. She felt incredibly warm. Electricity shot up my arm. "It isn't selfish," I murmured. "And I see you, Danielle. Not the mom. You." A sharp inhale hissed through her teeth. Her eyes shimmered, and a lone tear traced a path down her jawline. Yet she didn't withdraw. Instead, she gripped me back, her thumb stroking my knuckles with a desperation that suggested letting go might shatter the moment. "This is dangerous ground," she whispered. "Jaden, you have your whole life ahead of you, and Liam, he considers you a brother. It's just too—" She shook her head, overwhelmed by the racing thoughts. "I know," I cut in, keeping my voice grounded and low. "Ideally, it wouldn't be this complicated, but I'm standing here by choice. I'm not moving unless you ask me to leave." We locked eyes, the universe shrinking until nothing existed but the fairy lights and the pressure of her palm against mine. I was certain she was about to lean in, bridge the gap, and erase the boundary we had been pretending to respect. Sudden headlights and a loud exhaust from the street shattered the bubble. Danielle flinched, took a ragged breath, and slowly released my hand. She furiously dabbed at her face, scrubbing away the evidence of her vulnerability. "Let's get the rest of this inside," she said, her voice straining for normalcy, "before Liam sees the mess and panics." "Right," I managed, hoisting the garbage bag again, my skin still tingling where our hands had joined. "Good plan." We worked in silence, moving in orbit around each other. Every accidental brush of a sleeve sent a shockwave through my system. Later, as I unchained my bicycle, Liam slapped my shoulder, thanking me profusely and making self-deprecating jokes about his terrible grilling skills. Danielle remained on the veranda, arms crossed defensively, observing the two of us. Our gazes connected for a heartbeat, and she offered that same secretive, fragile smile. The wind on the ride home was biting, but it did nothing to cool the heat in my mind. I kept looping the scene on the balcony, the texture of her voice, the warmth of her grip, the raw look she gave me when the truth came out. The dynamic hadn't just nudged, it had fundamentally altered. We had crossed a threshold. Even without a kiss or a dramatic declaration, an invisible boundary had been breached. Logic dictated I should be terrified of the implications, yet I couldn't summon a single ounce of regret. Originally, it started innocently enough. My best friend's mother needing a quick photo taken on a lazy Sunday afternoon. But in the weeks following her party, I realized if I had known where that simple favor would lead, I might have shaken the camera. Or perhaps I would have been just as bold, repeating the line, "You outshine every girl in my demographic." Post-celebration, the tension didn't dissipate. Instead, it solidified, becoming a heavy, tangible presence. My routine persisted. Stale corporate coffee, mindless Zoom meetings, nodding along while Liam ranted over beers. He droned on about market trends, managerial incompetence, and petty office politics. Every time her name fell from his lips, my chest constricted. He was blissfully oblivious to the current running between his best mate and the woman who birthed him. Beneath the surface, Danielle became a constant rhythm in my life, a secret frequency. Our digital correspondence never ceased. Day or night, my phone would light up with something from her. Like this morning, a photo of a messy canvas. "Student tried to paint a cat," she captioned it. It looked more like a purple storm cloud sprouting legs. I sketched a quick digital overlay, turning the blob into a caped superhero. "Fixed," I sent back. "That'll be 1 coffee." She shot back a laughing emoji and a deal. Then, one afternoon, a different kind of message froze me in my tracks. "I still keep that photo you took of me as my lock screen," she wrote. "Makes me smile every time I look at it." I stared at the text, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was that shot from the porch, her framed by the flowers, capturing that soft light and the quiet, tired sadness she usually hid from the world. "If you ever want an update," I typed, fingers hovering before hitting send. "I've still got my camera and plenty of time." A long pause followed. Then a single red heart appeared. Just the sticker, no words. Yet that silent heart screamed louder than any paragraph she could have typed. A few days later, my phone buzzed again. "Free Saturday?" Thinking I need new photos, something more polished. For the school website and maybe just for me. My stomach did a somersault. "Yeah, absolutely," I replied, trying to play it cool. "Name the time." 3 o'clock, she wrote. "My place. Bring that artistic eye of yours." Saturday rolled around, and I nearly canceled twice. I stood in front of my mirror, debating a button-down, then sighed and stuck with jeans and a clean black tee. I bypassed my phone for the DSLR this time, slung the strap over my shoulder, and hopped on my bike, heading toward Fremont. The sky was that crisp, rare blue Seattle only gets when the gray clouds finally decide to take a break. Her place looked exactly the same, yet my chest tightened with every step up the walkway. Danielle swung the door open before my knuckles could graze the wood. She was wearing a soft blue blouse and dark jeans that hugged her perfectly. Her hair tumbled loosely over her shoulders, and she wore just a hint of makeup, enough to make her eyes pop. "Wow." The word slipped out before I could catch it. "You look nice." She gave a shy, crooked smile. "Nice? That's it? Just nice?" "I mean, great," I corrected quickly, feeling the heat rise in my neck. "Really great." She stepped back to let me in, and a wave of coffee and vanilla scent washed over me. "I thought we could start by the window," she said, gesturing to the living room where afternoon sun pooled on the floor. "Then maybe the porch again, if that's okay?" "Whatever you want," I said, trying to sound professional. "You're the boss today." She rolled her eyes, but the smile stayed. We started near the big front window. I directed her to the edge of the sofa, then standing, turning just so into the glow. I guided her chin up, told her where to focus her gaze to catch the light. My brain was static the whole time, fighting to focus on aperture and ISO, instead of the fact that we were completely alone in her house. "Drop your shoulders a bit," I instructed. "You look like you're waiting for the principal to give you detention." That got a laugh, and the tension vanished from her face. I clicked the shutter right then, freezing that genuine laugh, the one that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Look at this," I said, tilting the screen toward her. She leaned in, her arm brushing mine. That familiar electric jolt shot through my veins. "Oh," she whispered. "I actually like that. I look softer, less exhausted." "That's because you are softer," I said, voice dropping. "You just don't see yourself that way." She looked up, and for a beat, the camera was forgotten. She cleared her throat, breaking the spell. "Come on, let's do the outside ones. That's where this whole story started, right?" We stepped out onto the porch. The planter box was still there, marigolds fading but holding on to their last bursts of orange. I had her lean on the railing, then sit on the steps, letting the golden hour light wrap around her. She tucked a loose strand behind her ear and looked right at me, waiting. "Like this?" she asked. Something in my chest pulled tight, like a rubber band about to snap. Seeing her there, so calm and open, bypassed my brain's filter completely. "Honestly," I said, camera raised but finger off the shutter, "you look better than any girl my age." The words hung suspended in the cool air. There was no reeling them back in. Her eyes went wide. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't laugh. She didn't roll her eyes or make a joke. She just looked at me like I'd finally said the thing she'd been secretly hoping to hear for years. "Jaden," she breathed. I lowered the lens, palms suddenly slick. "Sorry, that came out weird. I mean, not weird. I meant it. She took a step, closing the distance between us. The porch went silent, the traffic noise fading into a distant hum. "Don't apologize," she said firmly. "You meant it." I nodded, throat clicking dry. "Yeah, I did." We stood frozen in the crisp autumn air, sunlight catching the gold in her hair. My heartbeat was a drum inside my skull. "This is insane, isn't it?" she whispered. "You're 23. I'm 42. You're my son's best friend." "I know," I replied. "Believe me, I know." "Then why do I feel like I can finally breathe when you're near me?" she asked, eyes glistening. "Why do I feel more like myself with you than I have in a decade?" I swallowed hard. "Because I feel it too. I've tried pretending I don't. For Liam, for you, for myself. But I can't keep acting like this isn't happening." A single tear traced a path down her cheek, but she smiled through it. A small, honest thing. "You really do see me," she said. "I do," I answered softly. "And I don't see Liam's mom. I just see you. I see Danielle." She was the jazz enthusiast who dabbled in watercolors, the soul who cowered during thunderstorms but chuckled at my terrible sketches. The only person capable of making this sprawling metropolis feel like home. A sound escaped her lips, a fragile collision between a whimper and a chuckle, vibrating in the quiet air. Words died in my throat as her palm found my cheek. Her touch was a warm jolt against my skin, locking my muscles in place. Yet I couldn't bring myself to pull back. "Say the word and I'll stop," she breathed. Gazing into her eyes, the answer was already written. "I won't," I murmured. Then she closed the distance. It wasn't a tempest, but a slow tide, deliberate, tender. Her lips brushed mine with a cautious softness, as if handling something incredibly fragile that might shatter at the slightest pressure. I placed my hand on the curve of her waist, simply anchoring myself rather than pulling her close. In that suspended second, the universe contracted until nothing existed outside the wooden planks of the porch. Years, definitions, shame, all evaporated. It was just her, a woman convinced her vibrancy had dimmed, and me, the guy who had unwittingly captured her spark through a glass lens. Breaking the kiss didn't mean breaking the connection. We lingered there, sharing the same breath, her forehead pressed gently against mine. "Nothing goes back to normal after this," she murmured. "I know," I replied. We both understood the shadows weren't a permanent shelter, especially not from Liam, not from the world. Anxiety rippled through her expression. "He'll be devastated, furious even." I met her gaze. "He might despise me," I admitted. "For a time, anyway," she said, scanning my face for doubt. "Is the price too high?" she asked. My mind drifted to the countless evenings spent staring at a dark screen, desperate for a notification with her name attached. I recalled the warmth that bloomed in my chest whenever she laughed, and the weight of her gaze that made me feel, for the first time, truly visible. Feeling her palm still resting against my jaw, the answer was obvious. "Yeah," I told her. "For me, absolutely. But you have to feel the same way." Silence stretched between us before she offered a slow, resolute nod. "Then we come clean," she decided. "Maybe not this instant, but soon." She paused. "Together." "Together," I echoed, sealing the pact. We retreated indoors, the cool air replaced by the glow of the camera's LCD screen. We hovered shoulder to shoulder, the accidental brush of knuckles sending electric signals through our nerves. I scrolled through the shots. They were striking, exceeding even my own critical standards. The images captured a paradox: steel and silk, vulnerability and power. She looked undeniably alive. "I want them," she said softly. "Send every single file, even the ones I feel unworthy of." "There isn't a single frame you haven't earned," I countered. Stepping back out into the street, the atmosphere had transformed. It felt as if the entire city's axis had tilted just a few degrees. I knew the road ahead was a tangle of complications and emotional debris. Pain was inevitable. Interrogations were guaranteed. I was already scripting the impossible conversation with Liam, playing out the grim scenarios in the theater of my mind. Yet as I pedaled through the deepening twilight, with the wind cooling my flushed skin, a vibration in my pocket pulled me back. Braking at the curb, I read the screen. "Thank you for really looking at me. For today. For it all." My fingers didn't tremble as I typed the only response that mattered. Always. It began with a shutter click, but I was done pretending it ended there. Sliding the device away, I kicked off the asphalt, tires humming against the concrete as I picked up speed. The final chapter of this story remained unwritten, obscured by the future's fog. But one truth was crystal clear. My best friend's mother had asked for a simple portrait, and I had viewed her through the glass of my lens. Yet somewhere amidst the garden blooms, the thunderstorms, the shared coffees, and the quiet of that porch, I realized I wasn't just capturing a photograph. I was capturing a life I wanted to be part of.